Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review for Project MKHexe. Yes, this is something I had no clue about. So Luke introduced this film to us. How'd you hear about it? It is a Screambox exclusive. So I was not surprised because every once in a while, especially with how busy we've been and all the films we get, you like to throw one of these in the mix. You're never forgetting about our boys over at Screambox, taking care of them. And yeah, this one came out of nowhere for me. So take it away. Where'd you find this film?
Honestly, I'm right there with you. Apparently, we had gotten, we get the notifications at the beginning of the month for Screambox and what's going to be appearing there. We got that. I think we're just so busy, we didn't take advantage of it because this one,
Mm-hmm.
I did that found footage horror list a few months ago, and I started perusing a lot of found footage horror pages and things, and honestly, that's where I found this one. It popped up. Someone had posted the trailer, and the trailer caught my attention. I think it was done rather well in terms of that horror aspect. It really does lean on a lot of horror. And I will say, going into this film, the trailer sells a specific kind of horror film, and I don't think we get that here with Project MK Hex. I think, this one dives more into the science fiction elements to it. There's, it's not as much terror as is presented in that trailer. So I think maybe going into this one, people need to be prepared for that. But honestly, that trailer caught my attention. I thought it was a rather interesting concept and what they were going to tackle, which they do tackle that in here, just not necessarily from a horror perspective as much.
Yeah, this goes a lot more into dare I say the horror sci-fi very kind of just touching the cusp of where you kind of have little cross sections of analog horror, I would say, in this, but it is still very much a found footage horror film through and through. It's presented in like a documentary for
Yeah,
most of it, a
mockumentary kind of
majority
found
of it.
footage
Yeah, it has
mashup.
those Lake Mungo vibes. It also has those Strange Harvest, which is a film that has yet to come out, but we got to see it at Fantasia, and that one we had a lot of praise for. It's seriously really good, and this one definitely has those aspirations. But I have to say, and this is no slight on the filmmakers, but just something that I need to get out there that I feel is important before you sit down and watch this. This is what Screambox is known for. This is what they're really good at, and we have to bless them for giving people like this a platform. But you can very much see this is a very, very low budget movie, almost amateur film esque. But I have to commend them for how hard they swing for the fences in some places. Some parts of that work really well, and I'm very impressed. Other parts, I think they could have maybe done without. I think this movie's big sinister flaw for me, though, is that runtime. I feel like this movie is just a bit too long. You could have really condensed a lot of, especially the kind of midsection information, in my opinion.
Yeah, you really start feeling that runtime. This pushes over an hour 40, and for found footage films, I think that happy medium is, hour 20 to hour 30, just because it tends to be a breeze, especially when you're using the found footage aspect or the mockumentary style and working with a smaller budget. You're really going to take advantage of locations. You're not going to necessarily jump back and forth. And I think looking at this film, they tackled the aspect of this kind of government conspiracy, all this Project MK Hex, and what they're uncovering. They use that to their advantage, the found footage style and mockumentary style, where it's kind of, we're looking at notebooks, we're looking at still pictures, we're finding lost footage, really uncovering some aspects here. And I think that does help. But when you're using that an hour 40 and really pushing even past that, I think you start feeling that just because there isn't enough. You can really condense the story. And, I said this doesn't necessarily lean a lot on horror, which we'll touch on, but the concept here of Project MK Hex and what they're uncovering, I thought that concept there was really well done. And I think, that's really where this film excels, is taking that idea, which we've seen, across different platforms, and tackling it from that found footage mockumentary aspect of it. Because I think it approached it differently. It felt more unique than what we do get with these films. Although it doesn't dive too deep into the horror, it dips its toes in, I would say. But I think just from that science fiction aspect, it works rather well. Just that runtime, it lingers a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a film that is kind of really trying to tap into a lot of conspiracy, government society, secret society kind of thing. And we've seen some films recently that we really love that did that, that kind of hearken towards that. And this is one again where it's like, I see what you're going for. There are parts where I get really excited and I get really interesting. But then like as the film kind of progresses and we do start to, I guess, implement more elements of that horror, I kind of see a little bit of a hard time with me being like, okay, so like we're getting lost here. We're putting a lot out all at once. And I feel like I'm kind of getting lost with, is this like supposed to be more horror based or is this supposed to be more sci-fi conspiracial based? And I think you can mix those really well. I just don't know if they necessarily found the happy medium between it. So I definitely feel like there could have been some work there. And I think that just comes from a script standpoint, in my opinion. But I think really at the end of the day, we have to look at this as what it is. And it is something where it's like, this is clearly a project that was made, if you look on IMDb and everything, with just a few people. It was a very small crew, very much just someone trying to get a film made, their vision on screen. And I have to at least commend them and say that even though I am honest about the flaws, I still found this to be pretty impressive. And I think if you are an aspiring filmmaker or somebody who wants to get into this, this is something you should watch. It feels very, I guess, like, what was that Robert Rodriguez show that he had, Rebel Without a Cause or Rebel Without a Crew, based off his book, where it's like you could see people kind of coming up from that. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah, and I love that, Screambox, Shudder, and, we can really champion Screambox for this, is taking these small properties and really giving them a platform for their creative to show, because, this could easily get lost in the shuffle. But this being a Screambox release coming out on Tuesday and this kind of being able to showcase it, and I love that aspect of it, because while this film didn't 100% work for me overall, I think, it gets the creative juices flowing. We always talk about scripts we mess around with. There was one in particular that we talked about that I thought, would be rather interesting to use this approach for it, because I hadn't seen subject matter like this tackled in that found footage mockumentary aspect. And then I think there are a lot of other films out there where you kind of critique them. We're saying, the budget wasn't there, the idea was, but just you couldn't really get it cinematically. So I think, if there's a creative out there that has a very cinematic script and can't really figure out budgetary reasons, to be able to make it, I think, looking at that found footage style, looking at something like Project MKHexe and understanding the subject matter and approaching it differently, I think this really could inspire a lot of creatives. Because this one, while, as we speak on horror, there are like two horror aspects in here that I think really find its place. And I know you mentioned Lake Mungo, where I think the trailer for this one is cut into that somber tone, just like Lake Mungo. And maybe I got my expectations up a little too high. So I kind of want to, pull back. If anyone's watching this prior to seeing the actual film, pull back those expectations. You're not getting something like a Lake Mungo. That one, I think it's really upper tier when we're dealing with mockumentaries.
Yeah, one of the scariest movies ever, seriously. But like,
that could be an unfair comparison here, so don't really go in expecting that. I think this one is a noble approach to the found footage mockumentary style and find its unique place in that with this storytelling. Just overall, I think some of the script, performance wise, was a little weak.
Yeah, and overall, I think when you're dealing with the material they're tackling, as far as, again, trying to kind of hit all these different like sides to what these conspiracies, what these kind of mockumentary like avenues open up for you, I think that you can tell there's a lot of stuff they wanted to just get out on paper. And because, again, amateur kind of film, you can really feel that there's a lot of stuff they were not willing to sacrifice when it came to the edit. I would be willing to bet there's a lot more that probably got cut already. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Again, I think that this is definitely something that if you are someone who's looking to get into filmmaking, I mean, looking into just trying to, look and see what some of our peers are doing. I mean, I commend these guys for doing this because I think, again, for it being a bit long in the tooth and some of the ideas, I guess, again, not being super well fleshed out, I think that the ones that are and the ones that they accomplish overall, it's impressive. It's very exciting, and it does, like Luke said, get those creative juices flowing. So I could see this benefiting a lot of people. This video is sponsored by our good friends over at Abracadabra NYC, your one-stop shop for all your horror needs and necessities. By following our link in the description, you can see all that they have to offer, from horror collectibles, costumes, accessories, magic masks, and so much more. And if you find yourself in the New York area, please stop by their physical location. They have 3 floors of everything you see in the store and a unique, memorable experience to go along with it. So whether you're looking for something creepy, cutesy, or just super cool, they've got you covered at Abracadabra NYC. And, on the whole, as a horror movie, if I'm just taking myself out of there, it's nothing super special. But again, as something that's you can admire, as something that, if you're, looking to maybe at one day get yourself to a mockumentary or a found footage film, I think this is another good one to check out. So with that, with all my caveats in place, I'm going to give this a low worth a watch. I think that, again, I enjoyed my time enough with this, and I think some of you may actually enjoy it more than I did.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're going in looking for here. And again, don't get your expectation to that Lake Mungo tier.
Mhm.
This is something that's way smaller. They really dive deeper into the science fiction elements rather than the horror. So I think the trailer was cut rather well. It just did not deliver from the horror aspect that it does present. So I was underwhelmed in that aspect. I did want to touch on performance-wise. I think, when you're dealing with found footage, one of the aspects that I absolutely love is that sense of realism and the approach from the actors to make it feel unique and make it feel real. Unfortunately, I don't think it was here. It seemed a lot of the actors, sometimes they deliver their dialogue so smooth that it seems like it was rehearsed way in advance. So it took me out of the realism aspect of it. It didn't feel as unpolished as I thought it could be. So did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, it's one of those moments where some of the lesser characters, the real side characters, who you could probably just tell are their friends, are coming in and saying stuff, and it just feels like they're riffing, and it just feels like they're going, and those feel the most natural.
Yeah.
Like there's a part really towards the beginning with a character who's kind of like video calling in, where I'm like, that feels like just a dude was given some parameters and just said run with it, and they used the best stuff, and that feels great. I love that. So yeah, when you juxtapose that against some of the acting, yes, I agree. It does stick to okay, they have to get these points in the script across. That's why I'm saying there's a lot of I feel like there could have been more attention to just cutting and attention to just being like, hey, let's work this out, let's run through it. It does feel like kind of like they had full confidence in their script, which they should, but I just think they could have given it a few more passes.
Yeah, I think, just to come off a little bit more natural, maybe some uhs and ums, or, just kind of not right out of the gate having this long piece of dialogue in there as soon as we turn the camera on. So, that part lost me a little bit in terms of that found footage aspect of it. So, underwhelming, certainly, I think, but the subject matter I thought was tackled rather interesting. I love that found footage mockumentary aspect for what we're going to uncover in this film. So that was a fun ride. Just a lot of the other things, a lot of the other elements seemed rather weak. So I'm right there with you. This is just squeaking by. Proceed with caution and hitting worth a watch, just because I think that concept alone is done. I love how we uncover it. I love the details that they give. And I love that they're presenting this in more of a unique aspect than what we normally see something like this. So worth a watch. I think, when this comes out on Screambox, a lot of people can have fun with it. I don't think it's going to be something that's probably going to be on the best ofs of the year at all. But I think this one, people could go back and watch it, especially if you're already subscribed to Screambox. I think this could be one you could have some fun with.
Absolutely. But thank you again to the folks over at Screambox, of course, for sending this over, letting us check this out. They're always willing to take care of us. And yeah, I definitely think that we, like we said at the top, we've been busy, we've been running around, that we need to check back in on the Screambox train a little bit more often than we do. And that brings me to my next point in saying, guys, this Thursday, if you're watching this, stay tuned, because we got some announcements coming. Thursday is the big day. We're going to have a video dropping, so that way you guys know what's going on, what's been going on, and what the future holds for Splattercast. Ooh, ominous. Yes, gotta leave the little bait there for you guys. But hey,
A looming
other than that,
specter.
yes, lots of great stuff up on the channel. We saw Until Dawn this weekend. We talked about a movie called Havoc with Tom Hardy. Lots of great stuff. And Luke also looked, speaking of mockumentaries, at some documentaries, and you should check out that video. All of them linked throughout the video and, of course, at the end here. So with all that said and done, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.